The night started with a joke that should have ended in quiet laughter, but for him, it became the turning point of his entire life. The young man named Dan sat with his friends outside a small station on the edge of the city. The sun had set, and the streetlights cast long faint lines over the ground. His friends talked about courage, dares, and the strange rumors that always circled around the old district, where people said beings from other worlds and unseen corners lived among humans. Dan never believed most of it, but he liked stories and had a sense of adventure that sometimes put him in odd situations. One of his friends pointed to the far end of the street where a dark shape stood near a quiet alley. The figure was tall, pale, and still. Many claimed that vampires were real but kept to themselves, even forming their own quiet communities hidden in abandoned blocks. Dan had always laughed at such things. To him, these tales were nothing more than stories people repeated when bored. A friend nudged him and said it would be funny if he asked a vampire on a date as a bet. Dan replied that he would do it if one ever actually appeared. The friends laughed and agreed to hold him to his words. Then the figure at the alley lifted its head slightly, and they all fell silent. The shape stepped forward. Something about the calm movement made them freeze. A cold breeze passed through the area as if announcing her arrival. The figure became clearer as she walked under a lamp. She looked like a woman around his age, with pale skin and deep eyes that did not seem threatening yet carried an ancient sadness. Dan's friends whispered that the bet was now real. He could have refused, but he had made foolish promises before and had managed to walk away with pride. This time he felt a strange pull. He was not afraid, only curious. So he stood and walked toward her. She watched him with steady calmness, as if she had sensed him. Long before he made his decision, he greeted her with as much confidence as he could manage. She tilted her head, studying him. Her voice was soft, almost like a gentle echo as she asked why he was approaching her. Dan responded honestly that he had made a silly bet. He said it lightly, expecting her to mock him or walk away. Instead, she looked at him with a faint smile that did not look amused but thoughtful. Her name, she said, was Lena. It was simple and human-sounding, but the stillness in her posture made it clear. She was not just another person on the street. That she told him that she knew humans liked to play games. But she also said that approaching someone like her was not something people usually attempted. Dan replied that being scared was boring, and she held his gaze with a curious intensity. He asked if she would like to go on a date with him. He meant it as part of the dare, but he kept his tone respectful to avoid insulting her. To everyone's surprise, she said yes without any hesitation. His friends whispered nervously behind him as he stood beside her. She said he could walk with her for a while. He agreed, and within moments he found himself leaving his friends behind and following her down the dim street. She walked with quiet grace, moving in a way that seemed effortless. Dan felt that she was dangerous, but not hostile. Instead, it felt like walking beside a strong guardian. She asked him why humans made bets about things they did not understand. He answered that humans got bored easily and liked to test their own limits. Lena said that some limits should not be tested lightly. Her tone was gentle, not threatening. Dan said he believed that understanding something new was more important than being afraid of it. She gave him a small approving look. They reached a quiet garden hidden behind old buildings. Despite being at night, the place glowed with faint lights from small plants that seemed to hold a subtle luminescence. Dan admired it openly. She told him that her kind had tended to such gardens for many years, using them as resting places. She explained that her people avoided conflict and watched humans from a distance because humans often reacted with fear. Dan replied that humans reacted strongly to anything unknown, but also had the ability to form bonds with anything they took the time to understand. She sat on a stone bench, and Dan sat beside her. Her movements were always precise, almost like she controlled every breath and step. She asked him again if he had truly meant his question, or if it had been only for the bet. Dan surprised himself when he answered that he meant it more now than before. She looked at him with a hint of warmth. She explained that relationships with her kind were not simple and came with responsibilities that humans did not always understand. Dan replied that nothing meaningful was ever simple. She seemed to appreciate that answer. They talked for a long time, and Dan found himself enjoying her calm manner. She spoke with patience and clarity, explaining things about her people and their long lives. She told him that her kind had a bond with the world and used their abilities only to protect themselves. They fed not on humans, but on energy from hidden springs in certain old areas. But she also said that there was a ritual among her people used rarely, involving a bite which created a strong eternal connection between two beings. Dan listened with fascination rather than fear. She warned him that such a bond was not something humans usually wanted, because it lasted beyond the length of normal human life. He asked if she had ever made such a bond before. She replied that she had never chosen anyone. Her voice carried a long, quiet sorrow that hinted at centuries of loneliness. Dan felt a sudden empathy for her. She had lived long, but had no true companion. He realized that even creatures of myth could suffer isolation. When he approached her earlier, he had been acting on a dare, but now he felt something genuine. He told her that he did not regret approaching her. She looked at him with wide eyes that seemed to hold surprise. She asked if he understood that choosing her meant accepting a path that humans rarely accepted. He said that he wanted to understand her world, not run from it. She placed her hand gently on his, cold to the touch but strangely comforting. She said that if she bit him, the bond would mark him as her chosen companion and would give him longevity beyond normal years. She warned that once made, it could not be reversed. Dan felt a chill at the seriousness of it, but he did not pull away. Instead, he asked if she wanted such a bond with him. Her voice softened as she said yes, because she had felt something rare the moment he walked toward her. Without fear, she leaned close. For a moment, Dan felt nervous but not afraid. She asked one last time if he was sure. He nodded. Her eyes softened, and she gently bit his shoulder. Pain flashed through him, then warmth, then a deep sense of connection, unlike anything he had known. It felt as if her presence merged with his thoughts for a moment, not controlling him, but linking their spirits. When she pulled back, he felt dizzy but calm. She explained that the bond had begun to settle. She looked at him with a tenderness that seemed ancient. She called him her mate with a tone filled with meaning. Dan's heartbeat quickened. She held his hand, guiding him through the strange new sensation. She said that he would not become a vampire, but would gain strength, sharper senses, and longer life. He asked if this meant he was now part of her people. She said that he was part of her, and that her people would respect him. She escorted him to the edge of the garden, and he noticed that the world looked slightly sharper. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds clearer. She told him that the bond was stabilizing. Dan realized that his foolish bet had changed his entire future, but he did not regret it. Instead, he felt an unusual sense of belonging. Lena told him that her kind would want to meet him soon. She said they would not harm him, but would study him with curiosity. Dan said he was ready. She looked proud. She explained that her people respected courage and honesty, and he had shown both by approaching her without mockery. Dan admitted that at first it had been a joke, but he now felt deeply connected to her. She touched his cheek gently and said that the bond made their feelings clearer to each other. They walked back through the quiet streets. Dan told her about human life, human food, and the small things that made human days meaningful. She listened with interest, saying that she had always observed humans from afar, but never shared their everyday joys. He promised to show her everything he knew. She smiled warmly. When they reached the spot where his friends had been earlier, they were gone. The street was empty. Lena said that humans often ran from things they could not understand. Dan said that he would not run anymore. She thanked him with a tone that hid centuries of longing. Dan felt stronger as they walked, but also calm, as if her presence guided him. She said that the bond had connected their energy. Dan realized he could sense her emotions faintly. He felt her confidence and gentle affection. She told him that he would not age normally now. She said that he would live long and walk beside her through many years. Dan accepted this with surprising ease. As they reached the end of the street, she asked if he wanted to return home or continue walking. He said he wanted to stay with her longer. She took his hand again and led him toward a peaceful path under dim lights. She told him stories of old cities and forgotten ages. Dan listened with wonder. In return, he shared stories of his simple life, his dreams, and his hopes. She seemed fascinated by the honesty of his words. She said she liked the way humans valued small things. She told him that eternal life could feel empty without such small joys. Dan said that maybe that was